Perfect. Love it when technology works. Welcome everyone to today's History Talk. My name is Will Best. I'm the museum manager at the Champaign County History Museum. It was thrilling to see so many registrations for our History Talk series that we were able to get this room pretty filled and packed up. I hope that you'll all come to our History Talks down the line. Our speaker tonight, Mark Sorensen, will present an illustrated talk about how the Ku Klux Klan became established in Illinois in the 1920s, what they believed and practiced, and explain how pervasive their presence was in all parts of the state. Mark Sorensen is a past president of the Illinois State Historical Society and the former assistant director at the Illinois State Archives. Over the past 30 years, he has had dozens of articles published in Illinois Heritage and other magazines, and was featured in recent biographical films about A.E. Staley and James Milliken. His specialties include the origin of the Chicago Bears, the history of the Illinois State Capitol, women's suffrage in Illinois, the complete documentation of racial lynchings in Illinois, and the history of the wonderful Wizard of Oz in Illinois and beyond. Mark currently serves as the official Macon County historian and as the history consultant for the Untold Stories website and markers of the Macon County African American Heritage Trail program. His state honors include the Studs Terkel Humanities Service Award, the ISHS Lifetime Achievement Award, and the ALA Library Luminary Award. After growing up in Chicago, Mark and his wife Kathy came to Decatur 57 years ago to teach and continue to reside there and serve on numerous boards and commissions today. And now let's welcome Mark.
Thank you, Will. Can you hear me? And if you can't, let me know, because I am deaf and lame and working on blind. Okay. So my Wizard of Oz talk will be in the Monticello Library in September, and I can tell Will when that is, but it's a little lighter topic, more fun than, than this one here. And my racist terror lynching article, I can send people, or through Will, I have sent him the Ku Klux Klan article from this magazine, and I didn't have enough of these anymore. They're sold out. So if you're interested in the article, which has a page of references, that would be, you can send that. And the Rachel Terror lynching business is because we had a lynching in Decatur in 1893, and it's probably one of 3 dozen in Illinois that I have corrected all the databases in the country about. So I felt good about the research, not about the lynchings. So it's see if I can make this fun for us. It's very hot, so normally I would dress up, and I hope you don't mind that at all. This shirt makes me look fat, and I checked all my shirts, and they all make me look fat. So when I started this research, and it's a combination of a couple of things. One, the people from Assumption said they had a bunch of racists that lived there back in the old days. And so we started doing some Assumption research, and then I got carried over to Decatur and that business. And when I started doing the research, I was amazed, coming from Chicago, that Chicago would be involved in this, which we'll hear about. It just gobsmacked me, as we would say. And, you know, I knew about Bloody Williamson from my college days 60 years ago. And I thought, you know, and I'd been to Cairo, Illinois, and I thought, well, that's a, you know, hotbed of this place. And obviously Pekin, you know, it's a sundown town, right? So, but not Chicago. So the other thing I found out was nobody has done a statewide review of this. Every source I found did their research for a specific community, even the people in Chicago that did it. And so I would, you know, say this perhaps is the first statewide article, even though it's only about 6 pages long. So the last thing I will say before I forget, because I know I'll forget, is nobody was killed in all this Ku Klux Klan stuff, except in Williamson County, bloody Williamson County. And I think the body count was maybe 4 in there. And so we'll go on from there. All right. Technology is working already. So besides the people in Assumption asking me questions, this book went not so crazy with all the women's books clubs that my wife's involved with. And so the 2023 book about that Tina Egan wrote is excellent. The Hoosier State's Grand Dragon was David Curtis Stevenson, who in March 1925 kidnapped, raped, and tortured 28-year-old Madge Oberholzer before she died. Stevenson's November 1925 trial and conviction revealed that the organization that promised law, order, prohibition, moral rectitude, and the protection of Protestant womanhood did not come close to living up to that ideal. These revelations and other events weakened the Klan nationally, and by 1928, it was mostly gone from Illinois and much of the North. But let's have our put things in perspective. The Ku Klux Klan that a lot of people would think of would be the guys in bed sheets after the Civil War. The original Ku Klux Klan was organized in Tennessee in 1865 by former Confederates who believed in white supremacy and wanted to keep former enslaved blacks in their place. This violent and terrorist organization was stamped out by the federal government's enforcement acts in 1872. But after 1876, the federal troops were pulled out of the South, and the Southern masters, former masters, white people started to have domination and segregation, which we call, of course, Jim Crow. In 1893, Plessy versus Ferguson etched that in stone until the 1950s, that separate but equal was okay, and that lawful segregation, however, was backed by lynchings. Thomas Dixon in 1905 published The Klansman. I have not read it. I don't know if I assume it's spelled with a C, and I'm not sure. There's all kinds of talk about how we got to the Ku Klux Klan and what kind of Greek derivations these things come from. It really doesn't make much difference to me, or I don't care much about that part. This book didn't sell that greatly, but when D.W. Griffith made it into a silent movie in 19 and called it Birth of a Nation, the film sanitized the former Klan's reputation, characterized them as heroic saviors of white womanhood, and inspired the creation of a new Klan that year in Georgia in 1915. And that movie, by the way, when I did my research, played everywhere. I mean, it played in Champaign, it played in Decatur, it played, in Chicago, and often in places, some few people protested that it would play, but it always played. I've been doing lots of research on African Americans in Decatur, and about some of the ones that were in high school in the 1920s. And in doing that, I come across things all the time when you do newspaper research, and this is one of the things that I accidentally bumped into. And it's from the McClure newspaper syndicate. And it's, when I was a kid, there would be classic comic books for a whole 15 cents, and that's where I learned my history from, okay? And this is the type of thing that would be like that, a serialized history. But it just startled me that the future first black full-time life appointment judge in the United States would be in high school when this article would be put in the paper where he was the only black student in that class. Okay? And so that's the other thing about this. People rewrote history to show Confederates fought a lost cause, and that Reconstruction was evil, and that black people were ignorant and lecherous. This history promoted Jim Crow segregation and massive lynchings, especially in the South. Blacks must be kept in their place. So between the 1890s and 1910s, we're averaging like 120 lynchings in the United States a year. So this display ad was in the Chicago Tribune. Okay. In October 1922. After World War I, much of the country saw great black migration to northern cities, an influx of non-Protestant European immigrants, rapid industrialization with union activity, and a perceived loosening of morals. Thus, the new Klan was anti-immigration, anti-Catholic, anti-Jewish, against racial intermingling and miscegenation with blacks, for prohibition of alcoholic drinks, and for law and order administered by white Protestants. So part of what this display ad says is, the greatest danger facing America today is the gradual replacement of our religious and social and political foundations by those of alien origin. This fight is not a matter of racial prejudice. It is for love of country. People are telling lies about the real nature of the KKK. The Klan is only intolerant of the forces of evil. And apparently they had fake news back then as well. And I have a note here that as a preface that any similarities with things that are going on today is purely coincidental. So, again, I grew up on the west side of Chicago, and this was just amazing to me that this was what happened. So, August 16th, 1921. Beginning in 1921, the Klan adopted a modern business system of using full-time paid recruiters to entice new members into what was sold as a patriotic fraternal organization, just like the Masons or the Rotarians. Each new member paid fees for joining and getting a white hood and robe. On August 17th, 1921, the Chicago Tribune ran a front-page banner headline reporting that 12,000 Klan members had met the previous night in rural Lake County to induct new members into their order. And here is a picture of that event. The newspaper story explained that hundreds of autos gathered in the northwest part of Chicago and then made, quote, made an eerie pilgrimage 6 miles south of Lake Zurich, where 2,376 blindfolded initiates knelt in the rain, kissed a giant American flag in front of a large burning cross, and were welcomed into the Klan by the National Imperial Wizard Colonel William Joseph Simmons, who had come from Atlanta just to preside over this ceremony. This was held on the farm of a man named Charles Wegman. Those of you who are Cub fans know that name. I think Wegman started the Chicago Whales in a league that failed, but his ballpark stayed open, and the Chicago Cubs moved into that Wegman field. It was eventually sold to the Tribune, sold to my buddy, the gum man, and it became Wrigley Field. So Wegman, the ballpark still stands from this guy. I now have access to black newspapers, which I didn't have a year or two ago in my database. So I can get the Whip, and I can get the Chicago Defender and other papers. And so it amazed me, the Whip was a weekly, and the Defender came out more often. It amazed me that 2 black reporters from the Chicago Defender hooded up and went on this trip. And that's where their reporting came from. This is in 1922 in Joliet. So what I'm going to do is show you places from around the state. It's very Decatur-centric because that's the audience I was preparing for. And if the things I will show you, I could probably find most of the same articles in the Decatur, in the Champaign and Urbana newspapers, as well as the Bloomington newspapers and the Springfield newspapers. So over the next 4 years, there were many examples of these late-night initiations in many parts of Illinois. So by the fall of 1922, Chicago's Klan units contained between 50 and 100,000 members. Thus, Cook County, Illinois, had the largest membership of any metropolitan region in the United States. And Chicago had the largest Klan membership of any city in the nation. Fully 13% of eligible adult white Protestant men in Chicago had joined the Klan, and that's according to a Chicago researcher. But we'll find out that the Chicago Klan was fairly short-lived because of sneaky stuff. This is Jefferson and Hamilton had competing communication devices, newspapers, and the Klan, the pro-Klan, and the anti-Klan will have the same here. So this is the pro-Klan, but they were all in Chicago. It amazed me. From October 1922 to February 1924, the Ku Klux Klan published a Chicago-based newspaper called Dawn, a journal for true American patriots. Where have I heard true American patriots lately? Okay. The publication was a tool for the KKK to spread its ideology and influence public opinion, particularly in Illinois. So this is the cover from August 11th, 1923, so midway through their stuff. If you can't see, on the top left is the Atlanta Klan feeding or doing the little grandpa knee-jerk kid with the kid on the knee, seesaw stuff for the Chicago Klan. It was a little baby Klan when this started. And now it's this great big macho Klan here, who's passed this testosterone test, okay? And is shoveling all the things into the national rubbish pile. The Klan was shoveling a pile of undesirables, such as Sunday shows, booze, dope, gambling, bootleggers, drunks, dope fiends, criminals, corrupt politicians, disreputable women, and anarchists. Apparently, Chicago back then was a hellhole. But the Catholics had a newspaper they brought out, and it was called The Tolerance. And here we have an issue of The Tolerance from January 1923. It's a mostly Catholic, as I say, mostly Catholic organization. In 1922 and 23, it printed the names, addresses, and occupations of thousands of area Klansmen, which they had stolen from the files, many of whom were civic leaders and businessmen. This tactic, and the business boycotts which followed, caused the Chicago Klan to almost disappear by 1925. This magazine cover shows armed masked men threatening liberty. The byline on the bottom relates to one of the first, well, not one of the first, but one of the first modern Klan-related lynchings of black people in the South. And there was a big to-do in the papers about it for a year or more. Now, I worked at the state capitol for 27 years, and I didn't know about this. So I thought, well, we'll move to Springfield and see what happens in Springfield. Is when we have Governor Know-Nothing, okay? Leonard Small. And this photograph was in a Springfield newspaper, one of the two Springfield newspapers, a Democrat paper, but it never got circulated. I've searched for this for months and can find no issue of this. It wasn't until a couple of years later that a black attorney in Chicago who had gotten a copy of the picture reprinted it in Chicago with an ad against Governor Small's re-election, which he lost. Okay, so that's where that photo comes from. But if you've been to the State Fair, you recognize the inside of the Coliseum, and instead of prancing horses, you have a bunch of hooded people. Springfield's Klan chapter was founded in 1921 and ironically named Abraham Lincoln Council Number 3. It coordinated Klan parades to and rallies at the Illinois State Fairgrounds and other government facilities. The chapter's first big rally was on Saturday, October 14th, 1922, when nearly 2,000 Kluxers from Central Illinois came and 700 new members were initiated. Governor Len Small of Kankakee reported he had no idea how the Klan got a key to the state fairgrounds. And he was going to investigate that, because that shouldn't happen. In May 1923, the next year, the Illinois State Journal reported that 6,000 Klansmen again gathered at the state fairgrounds, to the bewilderment of the governor, to initiate another 650 new inductees. A third large rally was held there on October 11th, 1924, after a parade from the state capitol was held. The governor was going to see about firing the superintendent at the state fairgrounds. In August 1925, a Klan rally was held inside the state arsenal across the street from the state capitol. And a weakening Klan held its last large event at the state militia's Camp Lincoln in August 1926, which concluded with the burning of an 80-foot tall cross, the, quote, largest fiery cross ever built in Illinois. This photograph was in the Chicago Tribune, and that's not my source. But one of the things you'll find in papers, and the difficulty with doing this research is if you put in the search box Klux, because that's going to limit it as so it's just Klux, and I say Klux, Decatur newspapers, 1922 to 25, and I have 1 million hits, because the Decatur paper is carrying 20 articles a week at least from the entire country about all of the lynchings, burnings, beatings, arrests. So this is why it's somewhat difficult sometimes to do this kind of research, because the Springfield paper, Champaign paper, or the Chicago paper are printing all the national stories with the words Klux, and but when you keep at it, you'll find a couple things we'll talk about next, and that is the Klan now has organized into a money-making process. They have monetized themselves. They have monetized the hatred of other people. I don't know where that comes from. And they now are working on having these big productions and also solidifying their base. Okay? So we're going to do a little bit of church and a little bit of funerals. Lots of the church stories make the newspaper. Not so many of the funeral stories make the newspaper, and I've only found one funeral photograph in my entire research. So this is a gift to a church. I will go ahead back and read. In addition to the massive midnight cross-burning secret initiations, Illinois Klans often were featured in the local press for their visits to churches and funerals. On October 9th, 1923, the Pana Palladium reported that several members of the Klan, attired in their white robes, visited the Methodist Church at Oconee in Shelby County on Sunday night and gave the minister $30 and a letter of approval for his patriotism. The pastor then asked the congregation to stand and to sing America as the Kluxers walked out. There were examples of this all over the state, from Cairo to Chicago, of Kluxers in their robes walking into a church on Sunday night and giving them an envelope and a thank you note to the minister. Perhaps the most dramatic of all Klan church appearances took place in Chicago in 1922. When the 65-foot tall steeple of the Emmanuel Baptist Church blew over on April 19th in a storm, Pastor Johnson Myers prayed for help to rebuild his damaged church. On Monday, August 21st, 1922, the Chicago Tribune reported his prayers had been answered and published a photograph of some of the 500 fully robed Knights of the KKK who paraded that Sunday night through the all-white congregation, which now met in the church basement, as the Klan deposited more than $1,200 in the offering basket in order to replace the crumbled spire. In case you're interested, I found no evidence of the Klan visiting Catholic churches, Jewish temples, or Unitarian Universalist places. In this story, a 200 gift was given to the First Christian Church. It was the story from the Urbana Daily Courier. 50 Klansmen came during Sunday night service and left money with Reverend Harvey C. Bream. The Urbana newspaper explained that many of the church members were, quote, incensed at having the Klan there. The question was, they mysteriously show up, but it makes the newspaper the next day. Is the fix in? You know, does the Reverend know about this? And so there was a big to-do about that there. And our final one for today then, because it has a big headline, and it's from Decatur. The KK visit the Nazarene Church. 6 hooded men gave a $50 donation. On the bottom of that byline there, photographer catches them on the steps. Oh, gee, that was an accident. You know. Okay. So our oldest cemetery, or no, I should say our oldest cemetery, our big old cemetery that Abraham Lincoln would have liked, like the one he had in Springfield, a cemetery that's like a park, a Victorian cemetery, is Greenwood Cemetery. In March 1924, this photograph was published. It's the only photograph I've found of any Klan parading in a funeral or in a cemetery. 300 robed Klansmen put flowers on the grave and marched over the hill. On this next article, it talks about, I finally found out who was the name of the man that they had come to lay flowers to. Doesn't make any difference, it was Irvin Mills. The funeral was on South Broadway, which today is Martin Luther King Street. So maybe 5 blocks away, they have the home thing, you know, carry the casket over, you know. And the interesting thing was that in the story, the minister and the quartet were all robed up in KK garments before they came. And the other interesting thing is, the paper reports, they came over the hill, they parked their cars on, you know, one side of the hill, and then they, you know, walked across what you just saw, and then they went back to their cars, and nobody saw them disrobe, and nobody has any idea who they were. And this is, again, I found several of these before 1950, men especially belonged to lots of clubs. Okay, so we have Pythians and Foresters and others you don't even think about or hear about anymore, and so this was a funeral, and the funerary rites I've been to with Masons doing them, and it's very organized, and so the Masons take precedence. So you have the funeral at the house, and then the Masons do their stuff, and then lastly the Klan comes out in their costumes and walks around here, and this is at one of our other cemeteries. I have a series of posters, and we could have dozens of these from almost every big community in the state. And so again, I'm kind of Decatur heavy on this thing. You've all heard of Chautauquas, in Shelbyville especially, but and at a Chautauqua you have entertainment, and you have speakers that give you history programs and and refreshments and all that business. Well, a Klan Chautauqua was it. That was what they were doing. So this is one from Decatur, and let me get to the right place here just to keep going. July 1924, and this 3-day event is south of West Main Street. So I don't know if you've been to Decatur, but Main Street was a state route from downtown to Springfield. And so this was basically on the state road, and they went down towards the river where there'd be grass and things. Now today we have a Kiwanis Park, and we have the sanitary district to do their stuff with the water. And it's interesting that on the corner of Main where they would turn to this, I was in the basement of the house of David Livingston, the black man in Decatur that started the Voice newspaper. And in that basement, we were watching and listening to the election returns for a guy, Barack Obama, who was becoming a senator. So I think it's ironic that this parade of Klansmen, that David Livingston built a house right there on that spot, probably not knowing, but that's, again. One of the other goofy things about this was one of the newspaper editors of Decatur wrote an editorial a couple of days later saying, well, the newspapers in Decatur didn't promote the Klan, but I haven't found things where they condemn it vehemently. And the reporter, the editor was saying something about, well, they're kind of goofy, these Klans people, but they, if you got to know them, they're just like you and me, okay? And evidence of that is the state trooper who was assigned on that street, okay, on Friday, is Catholic, O'Malley, whatever. And one of the Klan's people said, oh, you can't have any of the ham sandwiches that we're selling here, and goes downtown to get him a cheese sandwich. And that was an example of how we're all brothers in this together, okay? At any rate, we won't spend any more time on that. Decatur had 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. I could find like 4 of these summer fests, and they were all over the state. And once they got these Klan Chautauquas organized, basically you had a big time one going in the north half of the state around, 3 days here and 3 days in Freeport and 3 days over here and then 4 days over here and 2 days over here. And in the south, the same kind of circular thing. And they often shared the same acts and entertainment. So here's Fairview Park, which used to be our county. The state fair was held there 3 or 4 times before Springfield got it. And let me see what I have here for 1925. It interested me that several churches had food booths there. Clans from many towns came. Klan parade in regalia down El Dorado and Wood Street was held. And 100 women or more formed a red dressed in red, formed a red cross walking down the thing. They had fireworks at night. The park superintendent estimated there'd be 30,000 people there. In the one before this, this one, the speaker last night was roundly applauded for his tirade against the Catholic Jew and Negro. He warns about the, quote, pouring of immigrants into the country. Okay. So for our Assumption people in the audience, 1923, October, the minister, Frank Patton of the Assumption Christian Church, was fired by his congregation for giving a pro-Klan talk in Taylorville. Later that month, that minister talked in the Fairview Park in Decatur and called his former parishioners shysters. Okay? Those people from Assumption are shysters, you know.
That was my church.
All right. And as well as the owners of the Herald and Review, Lindsay and Schaub, which to my the ones I know are not Jewish or Catholic, they were also shysters because they were fake news. Okay? Much as the media is owned by Catholics and Jews, as you know. Okay, so this is Moequa and Assumption events, July 1924. Again, I gave a talk in Assumption, so we had to talk about this. And this is one of the Decatur talks, like the third one was, the ad was 8 miles north on the hard road in 1923. Because we've had now hard roads for 3 years, but you got to be specific, okay, you're talking about. So it's concrete. This one here at Allie Bergner's gives all the directions, southeast this way and northeast this way on the oiled road. Okay. And again, churches are serving food at this thing. All right, Urbana, of course, is saintly. Except I did find out that it had a lot more racism than Decatur did, so I don't know, maybe I'm reading the wrong stuff. But here we have the Urbana Daily Courier saying, 100% Americanism never needed to hide behind a mask. I won't say another word. So we should be proud of what was going on here in Champaign County, right? Until 1923, okay, when the Illinois Theater in Urbana was purchased by the Zenith Amusement Company. J.J. Reynolds was the secretary of the Zenith, and Grand Exalted Cyclops of the Champaign County KKK. So the KKK owned one of your movie houses for, 7 years. The first event, I think, was the wedding of the Reynolds', his daughter there, and other things went out. It mysteriously burned down in April 1927. And you have research pages here, so if you Google this, you'll find the same thing I did, and that is it was scraped and was turned into apartments, and then that was scraped and turned into other apartments, or big house or something. Before we move on and get to the questions, I have one of my former professors here from library school who gave me an A, so I'm trying to do a good job. But another professor who's passed, Maynard Bridgeford, the archivist of the university, also gave me an A. But he did some of the research on what you're going to ask me about the KKK at the U of I. Okay? And I'll take Maynard Bridgeford's research over some other people, and that is, it was a bunch of goofy guys who didn't really know what they're doing, and it wasn't really affiliated at all with what we're talking about today. But you can challenge that. And again, you can Google that and you'll find all the stories at that U of I archives. Pekin, which, again, I thought was, a sundown town 30 years ago, today has a county clerk and recorder that's doing all kinds of, I want to say pro-black, but doing all kinds of stuff with Underground Railroad and and this. But here's the Pequot Clontarf in August 1924. Get the right one here. From September 1923 until June 1925, the local Klan owned the Pekin Daily Times, the only newspaper in town. During Klan ownership, the paper featured columns against Catholic parochial schools and race mixing, while advocating making Pekin, quote, the finest, cleanest, and most wholesome community in the state. The newspaper anticipated the arrival of over 20,000 Klanmen from 40 central Illinois counties to its August 29, 1924 Clontarf. And again, these are the kinds of posters in display ads and newspapers all over the state. And that one, the one in Pekin, had an amplifier on their ad, the world's greatest voice amplifier, which would allow voices to be heard, quote, a half mile away. I believe Pekin has changed their school mascot. It's no longer the Chinks. Okay. This is a newspaper that was short-lived that was run by the Ku Klux Klan called the Courier. Okay. Different than the Courier Cafe here in Springfield and Champaign. And again, every town, so here's Bloomington, okay? It's a wonderful place, but it's having these events. And there were so many ads. This is in the age, 1924. We have the interurban that connects all these central Illinois towns, which a lot of people, you could actually go out and flag it down off your farm and they'll stop, okay? You had all this train service, so Decatur probably had 25 passenger trains a day stopping at Decatur has 0 today. You have, what, 2 or 4, okay? So you could get anywhere, and so they were making all these posters with the train information. I get it, and we'll actually get a whole train full of Klan people and go do this at one time. This is from the Atwood Journal, which, if you don't know, is a teeny tiny little town between Decatur and Tuscola. Okay? And they have absolutely no blacks, no Jews, okay? 1 Catholic, and yet they have to have a Klan rally there to get the right information. Clinton, Illinois is between Decatur and Bloomington, as you know. And so here's a big 4th of July party from Clinton. All right, 1927 basically is the end of the line for the Klan pretty much in Illinois. That court case in Indiana had destroyed that Klan quite a bit. And now there were bad things happening all the time, and so it just kind of faded out. And also, I think people may have realized, well, gee, it's not as a patriotic organization that we were thinking it was supposed to be, At any rate, they had a Labor Day event at Nelson Park, by the lake. The irony there is it's where our water park is today, and we have thousands of people come to our water park every weekend. And they weren't wearing hoods anymore. So when they had a public thing like that, they just went in their, shirts that made them look fat, and they played baseball. And the follow-up to this is so this was going on in what I call South Central Illinois. In North Central Illinois, in Freeport, they played baseball the whole day and obviously didn't wear their outfits at all during that. The Decatur Cross now had hundreds of light bulbs to illuminate the fiery cross. Okay, probably the Park District said, no, you can't burn that here. Okay, so that's the general research from the 1920s. The Klan started in the South, grew very slowly until they figured out how to monetize this through basically Avon salespeople. Okay. When they got that, it went like gangbusters in Chicago. Then it died out in Chicago very quickly, but it stayed a thing in the rest of the state pretty much through 1927, 1928, and then it's Kaputski. Okay. But in 1975, newspapers are reporting that there's Klan activity in various places. And so we have pictures like this. By the way, one of my friends in Decatur, a Christian who turned Unitarian, his downfall, and found in his father's trunk one of these hooded Klan outfits. Okay. He thought, well, gee, I'll sell this on eBay. And even eBay will not sell these. Okay. So I think he threw it away. But there's an example of a wonderful person, okay, a man who became a wonderful person who was lauded by all his students for 50 years of teaching, whose father thought it was a good idea to belong to the Klan for a little while. Okay, that type of thing. At any rate, in 1975, this takes place. A few Illinois newspapers reported that the KKK organizers reappeared in Aurora, Cicero, Joliet, and Decatur. In response, the Illinois House of Representatives passed House Resolution 146 on March 25, 1975, to create a legislative investigating commission to, quote, investigate, evaluate, and report on any possible Klan activity in the state. Bob Sampson from the Decatur was a reporter in Decatur after he and I graduated from Eastern Illinois University, the Yale of the Midwest. And he wrote this article in 1975. He went and found the Klan person who was having a meeting and went to interview him in a restaurant. Okay? Bob Sampson later came over here after working for Dick Durbin and worked at the University of Illinois and got his doctorate here and taught at Millikan for a number of years. At any rate, it's investigated, and the state commission from the resolution, you'll see here, found things like this in their report. And so it's like a Boy Scout, it's like a Boy Scout helping the little old lady across the street. I've just helped this little old lady across the street. Here's my Klan card. I'm a good guy. You know, you've just been helped by a Klan member. Or the Klan member, secret Klan member, happens to see an interracial couple in a restaurant and just happens to mosey up to them and give them a card saying, you know, maybe that's not a good idea. Okay. Well, at any rate, the commission found out that basically this whole group was bogus. Based on knowledge gleaned from two investigators infiltrating the several Klan groups, the published report stated that the KKK in Illinois was virtually impotent, and that instead of the 2,000 members talked about in the media, there were actually fewer than 100 members in the entire state. And that died out pretty fast. So, thank you for coming. I saw this picture when I was probably in junior high or high school in a textbook, and I thought to myself, my goodness, how is it possible for a Republican president to allow all these hooligans to parade around the United States Capitol? That could never happen in our lifetime. And thus, that's the end of our thing. And this picture from 1925 could have been reproduced 2 or 3 times in that era in the U.S. Capitol. So, Will, you're in charge. If they have a question, I'll make something up to answer.
All right, well, let's give a hand to Mark.
Okay. I'll repeat, I have two magazines with a lynching article in it that Will will have, and he has access to the Ku Klux Klan article in case you're interested in that. Young lady here has a question, and I'm deaf, so speak up.
All right. There were several references in the programs, for example, at the Klanataqwas,
Yeah?
for the women of the KKK, and an interesting nomenclature, the Kleagle women of the KKK. What can you tell us about how that came to be, the women's arm?
Because John Adams' wife said, "Don't forget the women," okay? and so the Klan would never think of that, you know. I'm not a Mason. I don't know much about Masons. Someone asked me to join one time, but I understand in Masons there are Masons, and then there are different kinds of Masons, and then there are kind of women Masons things, and then you know, and in Rotary you got Rotarians, and then they fought like hell to keep the women out until the 1990s, and now you have women, and now you have juniors that you could try and make clubs. So the shorter answer is, they wanted to participate in something, and this would be something. And one of the things that I've neglected, I guess you would say, is to memorize all the K's. Okay, the Clavern is a meeting, the Kleagle is one of the people, you know, Grand Cyclops. But in this 1975 state report, which you can find online, and it's in the sources here, they spend 20 pages giving you all the K's. Every K, every definition. So they went into the whole thing and all that business. So if you're interested. You can also, again, we used to say Google it, I don't know what happens now. I have found to me, it's in the last month that when you quote Google something, when you do the AI, it now gives you the source of their misinformation. Okay, and you know, being a Decatur researcher, if I asked about something in Decatur and it pops up and it said, no, that's not right, because they're only copying what they could find someplace in the universe. All right, that was the first question. Okay.
Well, I happen to notice the name of a Charles Palmer in
Yes.
a couple of programs, and he was a Grand Dragon. Was that affiliated with the Palmer House?
I don't think so. I've not researched him. He was a lawyer in Chicago, is my understanding. So, the Palmer relatives, I'm not sure if they died out first. But let me go back. Yeah, sir.
You mentioned 4 deaths in the state of Illinois related to the Ku Klux Klan. Were there other acts of violence committed by the Klan during this time period?
I couldn't find any. It was almost all in Williamson County. They brought in a former federal agent while the county still had their fully elected official. They brought in someone from the federal government to come in and form a posse. Okay, and one of the things in Williamson was the conflict between old miners and immigrant miners, and prohibition people and bootleggers, and so that they literally had gunfights, which is how all these people got killed. So the answer to your question is that's the only 4 deaths that I could find, and anything else, and things like, you know, tarring and feathering or going to someone's house. So that's the kind of thing that you would see in the first Ku Klux Klan in the 1860s, that kind of threatening violence. And then, of course, in Jim Crow South in particular. On my lynching list, I can't remember now, we consider lynchings, racial lynchings, If you're, beat someone over the head with a piece of concrete, we're considering that perhaps a racial lynching because of the, and so a few things like that happened in the 1930s around the state, isolated, but not related to the Klan that I know of. Okay. Yeah.
I was just going to remark, and research I've done for various books that I've worked on, I found, we lived in Monticello and someone showed me one of the certificates to bring somebody into the Ku Klux Klan, and I recognized the last name, and I understand that it was generally accepted that if you were a business person, you might as well join the Ku Klux Klan because then, you're with the other business people. And in another thing I just recently found, in Clinton, in the genealogical drawers, there was a list of names who were applying to be in the KKK in the 20s. So you can still find stuff all over the place.
This lady here wants to name names, she said, okay, and do your genealogy for you, so shame. Yes. So we, as we found out, currently some people and politicians have things in their past that they don't think should, weren't proud of. Yeah. Any other questions here? Back there, yep.
Several of the ads said that there were naturalization ceremonies at these sites.
Right, that would be naturalization in the Klan, not immigrants becoming American citizens. yeah, and it was this card. One of the cards here in the 75s, which are really pretty sad. You've been patronized, the bottom one, you've been patronized by a Klansman. So that's the kind of thing that I go in to the department store and I buy a set of sheets and I give them a card saying, you've been patronized by a Klan's purpose, we're giving you business, and, and that type of thing. Okay, down here, yeah, one of the two of you decide.
For your racial terror article, you said you identified 36 lynchings, I think.
I could count them up, but I'd say, close to 3 dozen.
Okay, and were those, what's the source base for those 36 lynchings?
I'm sorry, the source?
What were your sources?
Oh, 100 things. I'm sorry, I used the mic. In my article, I point out that a person in a black institution did this 100 years ago, made a list. And it was, so I started with that list. And then I just did newspaper searches and newspaper searches and newspaper searches and that type of thing. And so I think I found more, and I believe I've corrected all the mistakes that he made, because I can't imagine how hard it would be to do this kind of research in 1920, because I know how hard it was to do in 1970, when you started graduate work and you're using microfilm and all those, and that business. So that's how I did this, and I didn't count, because I didn't count the Springfield, what they call race riots. I didn't count the Springfield race riot. I didn't count the Chicago race riot, and I didn't count the East St. Louis race riot. So these are 35-ish without that.
So these are the ones that got written out.
These are the ones that we could find.
I wonder how many more there were that actually didn't get reported.
Yeah, and I don't know if there would be a whole lot more, because this is an era when you came to town on the train and it made the news. Okay? You left town to go to see your grandson's birthday party in Chicago in 1922, and it made the news. And now that I have, the Defender and the Whip and other things like that, the Defender, I didn't know this, the Defender had columns, at least on Decatur every week. I didn't pay any attention whether they had one from Champaign. So they had the Decatur News in the national, a nationally acclaimed black newspaper. You could read about what's happening every week in Decatur related to black people. And mainly it's, Joe Blow came up here and we was at the party last night. That's how, so that's my answer to your question.
On the records, I find that a lot of the local Klan records are said to have burned in a fire as usual excuse. Here locally, we actually have some of the financial records down at the archives where, for just partial, membership dues, buying robes, things like that, has names, has their Klan member ID numbers and things like that. So we've been able to do a lot of really good research locally. I was wondering, have you actually run into, we actually had a fire. Our Klan headquarters here burned down, but the records survived. Have you run into this whole, our records burned in a fire, or have you actually stumbled across these kind of records with, like financial records and things elsewhere in the state?
No, because mainly for this particular article a year or so ago, I was using newspapers and published sources, and nobody particularly had that. But I would hear stories from Assumption or Clinton that would say, well, my great grandfather or this happened at my old church or blah blah blah. So I don't have a big list on that. Nathan?
Yeah. So I'm a black father of a 21-year-old biracial son who lives in Karnak, Illinois. Karnak is roughly 15 minutes from the border of Kentucky, about 5 minutes from Anna Jonesboro, if you're familiar with that space. I serve as a school administrator where the student population is predominantly black, whereas the teaching population is almost exclusively white. So what do you think your research on the Ku Klux Klan in Illinois has to teach us, not just about the past, but about whose responsibility it is to educate, lead, and tell the truth about our communities, specifically the truth as it relates to lynching practices, anti-black laws, etc. So what I'm asking is, whose job and responsibility is it to tell these stories? Because I don't know if I've ever heard these, and I believe that they're important. So who should be talking about this?
So in the 1970s, I was a teacher in public schools. And I came across in graduate school the lynching of the black man in Decatur. So I tried to incorporate that in my class. And as a white man teaching 70% white and 30% black students in the class, it was awkward because in the 1970s, to me, my observation would be this is awkward for black kids to hear about bad things that were happening to them, because what we should be hearing about is good things, that Cleopatra was black or whatever. And I have often wondered in doing my research in the last 10 years on things, how I would teach today if I went in. And I think it would, in Decatur, it would be in somewhat easier, because now in Decatur it's 80% black students and 15% white students or something. There's been so much more information in the world than there was back in the 1970s. So the answer to your question is, all this stuff is based on fear. I believe in information. I try to explain to my wife that I am going to check Fox News every day. I am going to check BBC. I am going to check Al Jazeera. I'm going to check CNN. Okay? I am looking at those, and I will look at Fox News and say, well, that's stupid. Okay? Or I will look at CNN and say, well, that's slanted. Or I'll look at Al Jazeera and say, how come we never heard about any of that stuff? Okay? You have to learn every source, including me, obviously, in the cute things I've said today, have prejudices, leanings, but you have to share the information. So I don't know what's going on in the talk that's going on in Washington, D.C. right now. Okay? As I drive home, I'll probably listen to see what happened. So I'm not sure if that answered your question. These were people who were afraid of change, And again, the best way to overcome that is to learn about people. So I've learned a lot. You know, my first graduate work was on a lot of black studies. And this last 3 years, the things I'm doing about black people in Decatur, Illinois, has personalized this. I can never step into their shoes, but reading the daily accounts on all this stuff is just kind of amazing. Yeah.
I'd be interested in knowing, the gentleman who just spoke, who do you think is responsible for this? What should we be doing?
So, I believe that I'm not responsible to tell these stories. I believe that white people are responsible to tell these stories. And so, I am a doctoral researcher here at the university, and I'm looking specifically at how white teachers justify their decisions with black students. And so what I'm uncovering is that often black students will get a referral and white students will get a conversation. And that's generalizing a bigger conversation. I was adopted by a white American who's here in Urbana, so I had a very different kind of upbringing where everyone in my family was racially white, you know, and so working through my own business, I'm able to kind of move in both spaces and feel a little bit more comfortable. But that's not the reality for most people. And as a black man, I think that we feel the most seen when white people don't expect for us to have harder conversations and come to us for answers when they're the normalized race, or what I would call neutral.
But I would say there's a room full of us here listening to the story to go and tell it.
Exactly. And so what you learn here, you don't just keep to yourself. You have, I believe, the responsibility to then share that with your friends. And I am hopeful when I come into spaces like this, you know, and I see my community members who don't look like me learning about this type of stuff. It does bring me hope, and it does remind me that I'm not alone. So thank you for coming very much. You didn't have to. But thank you.
Will, you're in charge.
Anyone else have any other questions? We got time for maybe one more.
One more perfect question. I'll make up one more perfect answer. Yes.
That last photo you showed, the Klan rally in D.C., I heard a report that there was a certain man by the name of Fred who was arrested at such an event. Do you know anything about that?
In one of these rallies?
Yes.
A man named Fred.
Yes.
No, I do.
Possibly the father of a Republican president.
Yes.
No, I'm afraid I don't know that. But as I said, as a young student, I always, growing up in watching TV in the 50s, I assumed that Chicago was, perfect, other than, Al Capone, and I learned differently. I also thought, the North was a good place to live and the South was a bad place to live. But you just keep having constant information, and so that's
Did you spend any time in Woodlawn?
No, because I lived in Austin, and Austin is the extreme west end of Chicago, and we didn't go past Magic Kissed carpet cleaners on Congress and Cicero. Okay, so no, the Woodlawn organization and that stuff didn't make the news until later, after I was going out of that area, though. So there we are. Okay, Will.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming tonight. We greatly appreciate your attendance, and we hope that you come to our future history talks. Next month is actually going to be a lot easier for all of you to join. It is going to be on Zoom. Erica Holst, Curator of History from the Illinois State Museum, is going to be showcasing Illinois history through 10 artifacts that represent central Illinois. So I hope you join us for that talk on August 20th. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
There's a second racial